Hey, John.
Angie,
So I have an interesting dilemma. I have several renewal conversations coming up in the next couple of weeks.
and how do you handle that?
So the dilemma that I have is that they're all so different. And I feel like maybe this time I didn't plan early enough for these conversations.
Well, I don't really have those kinds of conversations at all, but what do you need to say to them?
Well, wait a minute. What do you mean you don't have those conversations at all?
Well, my clients are set to auto-renew, so I told them at the start, if they want to cancel, they have to let me know, and they'll get notification when it's coming up.
Oh, that is so interesting. I think we need to talk about that in today's episode.
I think we should get to it. Let's start the show.
Awesome.
Welcome to the Coaching Clinic with John and Angie, the show for professional coaches that explores the ins and outs of coaching, from working with clients through to running and marketing your coaching business.
If you're a professional coach who's committed to your own personal and professional growth, cares about making a difference, and wants to have a successful coaching business, you're in the right place.
My name's John Ball.
And I'm Angela Bezignano.
Between us, we have over 50 years of coaching experience and best practices to share with you. From getting started to scaling up your business.
We know what works and what doesn't, as well as what it really takes to have a successful and thriving coaching business.
With new episodes every Wednesday.
Make sure you're subscribed to get them fresh.
So I love that. What you just said just kind of like blew me away because it never even occurred to me to have a client on auto renew. That to me is like this whole new concept. So tell me about that.
Well, yeah, gyms do it, so why not coaches? It really just became a practicality that made a lot of sense. And I would have said, I don't do it with all my clients. Like some clients are very clear, they just want to maybe go for a cycle coaching, and I'm not going to put them in auto-renew if that's the case. No, if they want to carry on, they're going to have to let me know after that.
Yeah.
But just out of practicality for having to potentially enter payment details and get a new agreement with them every single time the renewal was coming up was a bit of a pain in the backside. And also sometimes reminding clients about renewal does also refresh their memory of, which is maybe not a bad thing, of do I really want to stay in this? It perhaps puts in those sorts of doubts. It's stuff that you want to speak with them about anyway. But I think for me, it just creates a continuation in the coaching relationship, where it's like they're going to get notifications that the renewal's coming up. I'm going to remind them that the renewal is coming up, and that if they want to cancel it, they need to let me know. So they still have that opportunity, but I don't have to worry about whether they want to whether they want to change their credit card or anything like that, unless they need to, or having to re-enter payment details. So it's an admin thing. To a greater degree.
That is just so interesting. And you've had success with this.
It's worked incredibly well with clients I think, been doing it for at least 10 years.
Color me shocked, everybody, because again, it's not even a concept that I had ever thought about. It didn't even cross my mind. And I don't know why, to be honest, because you know me, when it comes to admin, I'm all about ease and I don't want to be bothered. So that's a pretty interesting approach to it.
I think it is one that you have to stay on top of as a coach. If you're going to do it, the last thing you want is to be that they're getting the notification they get of renewal is the bank alert telling them that the payment's gone out. That is not what you want, because that's usually the point at which they forgot about it, or they suddenly don't remember that there was an auto renewal and they're gonna be pissed off with you. You don't want any of that. So I've dealt with all that stuff very early on in the game, that it is worth, ideally you want to have a notification a month out, 2 weeks out, the week before, and a couple of days before. And I know it sounds like a lot, but that's the sort of stuff that you can set on autopilot, and so that they know that payment's coming. And then really in terms of renewal, all you need to do as a coach is remind them that's coming up. And as we've said in other episodes, as you rightly brought up, we want to be checking in with them along the journey that they're getting the benefit and value of coaching anyway. That maybe we don't necessarily want to have that conversation as part of the, are you going to renew with me as well? Because then it seems very like those two things have to be talked about in the same time. We can actually talk about the value at other times, and we don't really have to get into a renewal conversation. I find it's better.
Interesting. Listen, and I can't say that I'm going to I'm actually signing on a new client today. I'm not sure if I would throw that out there yet. I think I'd want to configure it to a way that works for me, because I don't know. I have to process and absorb. I think it's a great concept. So I'm definitely not saying, oh, I would never do that. When I think about renewals, a lot of coaches don't even think about that, right? Which I think is why we're talking about it today, is that they really don't think about, well, I'll worry about that when I get to it, because to them, it's like another whole sales conversation. So your idea kind of like eliminates that. But they do. They feel like, oh, I just got them to sign up. I'm not going to worry about renewing them until the end, which is a fatal mistake, I think, because for me, you and I talked about this earlier today, renewal begins, the renewal conversation begins at the very beginning of coaching, right? It shouldn't be, and this is a bad practice, it shouldn't be something that we suddenly just bring up at the end of the last session that we've got scheduled with them. It's too late by then. They are mentally gearing down. They are mentally gearing down because they know it's coming to an end. And there's a difference in their energy. The difference is when they start coaching, they're excited. They're like ramped up. They're ready to go. But as they go through the journey, if they go, oh, Angie, I have 12 sessions with Angie, and I'm at session 10, and I always notice it. Session 10 is around where they kind of start, I'm not going to say pulling away, but I don't think that they have the same energy regarding coaching. So at that session, when I start to see that shift, I absolutely will start talking about the value. I will start talking about what the challenges still are, because I think when we also, and I think you do this, right? Do you have a package? Like some of my packages are no less than, right, 12 sessions. So I know where this is going to happen with them. And I don't want them to look at it like, this is great. In these 12 sessions, I'm just going to be this brand new person. I tell them from the beginning, this package is the first leg of the journey, period. I don't justify it. I don't justify it, and I don't promote it per se in that way. Okay. I just say this particular space is 12 sessions, and this is what I'll be covering. So I kind of think that in the vein that you're talking about, which it's not auto-renewal, but I am already telling them that there's more. I'm already telling them that. And I know that, right? I know that there's going to be more. So that, I think, is the preparation, how I lay the groundwork for what the expectation will be later.
Which is what we call seeding. You're seeding the future work together.
Yeah.
Super important. And whether the clients I do have an auto-renewal, generally in there for 16 sessions, which auto-renews. And so the very first session, we have a conversation about that, because we're having a bit more get to know each other and get into what they really want to work on. And also we're going to say, okay, well, this is the first of our 16 sessions for this cycle. And remember that there is going to be an auto-renewal towards the end of it. Of course, we're going to stay in contact about how things are going. No renewal is going to go, and I have to reassure them this, no renewal is going to go through unless you've agreed it. Like we will check it. You'll get notifications by email. You'll hear from me. If at any point you don't want that, or I don't hear from you, then the auto-renewal is not going to get through. So if, for example, if you ever really have that much of a situation where your clients kind of disappear and they're not showing up for sessions that they booked in and stuff, it happens from time to time. But if that's the situation and the renewal's coming up, I'm going to cancel the renewal, because there's a good chance they're not looking at the notifications, and also a good chance that when they get the notification from their bank, they're going to be really angry with me. And that's not something
it's a pain in the butt for you too, for you to give a refund.
Yeah, reversing credit card charges and stuff, it ends up costing you money. So,
right.
And it's not good. It's not where you want to be.
Well, interestingly, so I don't make it, and I want to make sure that I'm being clear. I don't sit here and vomit renewal from the very beginning, right? Although it's a reference to. I will, if I find an opportunity, I want to be clear about this as well. If I find a genuine opportunity to reference it, then I will reference it. One of the things, I think I've said this to you, one of the things that I do toward the end of those sessions, though, and this is important for me to do as a coach with the client as well, is I kind of give them a little bit of that homework assignment. And I ask them specifically, the second to last session, to go back through their notes and the notes that I've sent them. Look at the journey. I want them to read it like a book almost. Like, here's chapters, right? Look at it in terms of chapters. I am telling you unequivocally, every single time, I have never, ever had a client come back and go, yeah, I didn't find that to be valuable. They come back and they're shocked. Right. Yeah, they're shocked. They're excited, and they actually see, right? This is how I get them to visualize where they started, where they are. And I'll ask them, so look at the journey. What do you think is most important to come next? Because I'm getting them to buy in, so to speak. I'm getting them to kind of look at this as a longer, right? I can tell them at the beginning, but until they see it, they're not really buying in. They're just, hey, let's just get started and see how things go. So that has been a specific tool that I have used that has absolutely brought that value and really helped them to see their journey in front of them, because they forget.
Yeah, of course. People normalize it. It's the principle of hedonic adaptation, right? If you've read Thinking Fast and Slow, great book. We normalize growth, achievement, or positive or negative developments in our lives within a couple of weeks, generally. That becomes it's just our normal now. So like all the good stuff that you achieve with your clients, unless you actually recap stuff with them or get them to recap their journey, they're not really going to see the full growth journey. They're not going to really relate back to where they were, because this is their new normal. And it feels like you've always kind of been there. You've always been there. And it's just not the reality. But you're right. We don't need to harp on about renewals, because then it just becomes a bit pushy. And like any sales kind of pushiness, people tend to have a lot of resistance to that. For me, it's part of, in the very first call, it's part of the logistics for how we're going to work together. Mm-hmm. That's where that piece comes up. We don't spend very long on it. I'm going to talk about it. I don't fully expect that they're going to remember in 2 months' time that we talked about auto-renewal as part of that logistics.
Sure.
But then I don't also expect that they're going to remember everything we did say on that call. So there possibly is stuff that I could do on top of that to really secure those logistics. Probably it would be good to actually think about this now. I think I will implement to send out a follow-up email after we've had that call saying, hey, look, here's just a reminder of the logistics we talked about. Remember, there's going to be auto. Even then, it's not foolproof, but we just wrote those things that help them to recall that. And also, when you get the thing of, oh, I didn't realize this was an auto-renewal program. As I know, we talked about this, and here it is in this email that I sent to you all this time ago. So it's easy. I know it's easy to forget about these things, but at least you can show that you talked about it. But yeah, we don't want to harp on about it. But as a coach, you need to be thinking about it, and you need to be thinking about the lifetime value. As we've said before, we've had clients, I think generally for me, the sort of average client length has been in sort of most coaching situations around 3 years of working with somebody, which is pretty decent. But certainly I've had some that have been 5 years, 7 years, even up to 12 years. It's like the lifetime value of a client can be enormous.
Yeah, I mean, listen, and here, let me bring out the uncomfortable part of this, which is the business side of it. Now, I would say to you that, I don't know if you've ever had this experience, but one time I opted not to renew a client that wanted to renew. And it was a lot of money. And I said no. And the reason why was because, I don't know if it was because the client was really just against, everything was a challenge. Everything was a challenge back at me. And I kind of had to say it was very draining. And it was funny because I didn't pick up on any of the abrasion during the discovery call. I thought that we were going to be a good match. And at the end, I said to this client, This has been, this is what we've done. And I still do the same thing. I knew I didn't want to renew. I went back, I made them look at the journey, and I gave them some options. I would like to refer you to somebody. And they were kind of flabbergasted. Like, what do you mean? Like, we've done this work. And I felt a little bit guilty because I felt like I was leaving them in the lurch. And I told them flat out, I kind of feel like maybe there's a better fit for you with a different. And I did make a referral. I gave them 2 referrals, actually. Talked to these people. And they were like, well, why don't you? They finally asked me, why don't you want to work with me? And my answer was, I don't think I'm going to be able to bring you the value that you are actually capable of. There's something missing, and I want to make sure that you are best taken care of. And again,
it's a tricky one now.
It was, and in the moment, it was very difficult because I thought what I tried to do was plan out like every response I could give. And then I thought, well, you have to be able to tell them why. And so finally I said to them, do you think, let me ask you honestly, do you feel like you showed up as you're super intentional for every session, prepared for feedback, prepared for all the things that I did that you asked for, by the way? You wanted more challenge. I gave you more challenge. I'm getting into this for a minute, and they were like, you know what? I kind of had to turn it around. I had to ask them to reflect, because in their eyes, it was like we were connectively the greatest thing since sliced bread, and we were not. I didn't want to say to them, you're fucking exhausting. I have a feeling that's not going to make it out there. But I could tell a lot of my sessions are exhausting, but mostly in a deep way. So there was just something that wasn't working, and I knew I did not want to work with this client, but I also wanted to make sure that their feelings didn't get hurt. So I really had to, I even said to them, even though we've done great work, like that doesn't mean that this is the best fit for you. So I really had to shift that. But so that happened one time where I was like, no way, I'm not doing this anymore. But I feel like I get really deep into it with my clients. And even though we talked about like rapport and where do we draw that line, I get excited about people's journeys, right? Because I start to visualize it. And it makes it so easy for me to have that conversation because I'm genuinely excited about it. So, of course, I hate and this is where your concept, I think, might come in, is, well, okay, so now let's talk about credit cards again. It just, to me, feels awkward because I've now built a relationship with them of trust and all the things. But now I have to go back and say, okay, credit card number, please.
And those money conversations are the ones that coaches tend to struggle with the most, which is why I think if you can bypass it and set up a more automatic system, and it's not going to be right for everyone to do it, you're going to have to make your judgment as to whether it's the right or effective thing to do for you and your clients. But it does bypass that, not completely. You may still have a situation where you're trying to process their card for a renewal and it doesn't go through. And that could be a number of things. Like sometimes the bank rejects it because of unexpected payment to them.
Sure.
They haven't told their bank is coming through. Sometimes it's that they've changed their card or they've updated it or whatever. It could be any number of things. So you still have to then go back to it. If you have a VA or assistant or someone who can do that, that's something I would definitely try and pass off to someone else so that you don't have to have that conversation, that the email can either, hey, look, let me know when you're around, we need to update your card details, or be able to give them a form or a box to do that more automatically, so that you don't really have to be a part of that process. And it's kind of good for you as the coach to not really, if you can, to not get into that sort of conversation that you're also the salesperson and the coach. Is that sometimes it's unavoidable. But
I have to tell you, the more clients I get, the more I couldn't agree with that statement more, because I feel like it just changes. Again, in the beginning, nobody knows anybody yet. So it is transactional. Our relationship in the beginning with them is very transactional. And even though we're not the best of friends and we're not having coffee per se, when we've talked about this, I've had clients tell me things that they've never said to another, never breathed to another human. So there is rapport there. There is a relationship. Yeah. And I feel like in those moments, it gets a little bit more uncomfortable to say, hey, by the way, John, sorry, but your credit card didn't go through. Do you have another? Because now I'm changing the dynamic. I don't like it, right? I don't like having to shift that hat.
Yeah, and I've had stuff with clients before, whereas where you can see the fear coming up in their eyes of, are we going to need to do some coaching about this because my card didn't go through? It's just awkward, and anything that's jarring to the coaching relationship, if it can be avoided, is better. So whilst there's the auto-renewal thing, some people hate it, some people don't like it, but nearly always get people to agree, unless there's always going to be those clients who say, I'm not happy with that, I'm not prepared to be on an auto-renewal system. Fine, take them off it.
Yeah.
But they're probably only going to be a handful of it. It's not worth having an argument about. It's like, if you're not comfortable with it, that's fine. Just saying we'll take you off auto-renewal. But for ease of flow in the coaching and to keep things continuous and to get to a point where we don't have to have any gaps in your coaching or be having any processing issues when it comes time to go through. If that's all been set up to go smoothly and you get notified and informed by emails and by me, then there's going to be a continuous flow to your coaching, and it's going to benefit you. It's going to be easier for all of us. The same as you don't really, any kind of membership thing you have. If you had to pay, enter your credit card details for Netflix every single month, it would be a pain in the ass, right?
But let me be devil's advocate. You're talking about, $15 a month versus $6,000, $12,000, like whatever that is. Like, it's a big. I think it's a big. Like, I feel like if I were to get, and I'm being devil's advocate. I'm like, okay, how would I feel on the opposite side of that? I think that it's easier to kind of make that the structure because you are, of course, talking about it in the beginning and you're setting it out like right there. Here it is. The table is set and it's all ready for you. But I do think the big difference between that hesitation maybe for them might be that it's not a $15 renewal or $30 renewal.
Yeah, well, maybe it's the golf club or the private members club or whatever it is that has a much higher membership. I would still much rather have an email or a letter saying, hey, your renewal's coming up. You don't need to do anything unless you want to cancel. I'd much rather have that and have a continuous flow. It's okay, I don't actually need to do anything other than take notice that you've advised me that I don't need to do anything unless I want to cancel. Yeah. I like that.
Yeah. No, and I think that's a great approach because I think I've seen coaches that I've trained, they fall off. They lose a tremendous amount of business at that renewal point. When you have the warmest, this is what you need to think about. This is the business side of the business, okay? Is that you now have the warmest lead you could have because they've already experienced you. So, of course, you want to take advantage of the opportunity. And I don't mean that we just want to keep renewing people because I told you, I've said no, right? If it makes sense. Obviously, too, if somebody in session 7 loses their job and they're struggling to put food on the table, I still have a renewal conversation with them, but it's very different. How do I know? I've had that happen. I actually had that happen twice. So it's a different conversation. I don't even want them to renew unless they're like, and one of them didn't, and one of them was like, oh no, I need you to help me get past this and into the job and blah, 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 on to the next thing. And they were willing to just keep going, and that's up to them. But it's you. The point that I'm making is that you have this very warm relationship by now, and this is your golden opportunity. You have a much higher chance of somebody renewing with you than going out and finding another cold new person to fill that space in your calendar.
Yeah. And I think realistically, anything you can do to reduce the friction in continuing a coaching relationship is going to benefit you and your clients. So which is why I kind of like the processes we're talking about. I love what you say, particularly about getting them to review the work that you've been doing together, because if you are waiting until kind of penultimate or last session to have that conversation with them, they then have to remember in the moment. And I don't know about you, how good are you at remembering a whole journey you've had with coaching in the moment? Or I can sometimes forget what I walked into a room for. How do you expect me to remember all this?
Where's my phone as I'm talking on it?
Yeah, where are my glasses? Oh,
Right.
All these kinds of things. But we're just not that good in the moment of remembering everything. So you're more likely to think, oh, your thoughts are far more likely to go to, it's actually quite expensive, isn't it? Rather than
Right.
thinking about the value of it. Yeah, you just think about the price of it. And those two things are different.
Well, another thing that I do, because I don't know about you, I think it's a lot today, huh? But I have experienced, I do experience, I should say, often clients saying to me, Angie, what do you think? Like they're looking for my opinion.
Like, should they renew? They are.
No, just in general, across the journey, it could be any situation in that circumstance, and they'll say, what do you think? Or sometimes they even do ask me for validation. Do you think I'm doing okay? Like coaching is some kind of test. And I'm like, ugh. So I don't ever go there. I always turn that right back and say, I am not here as that. I'm here to be objective and to help you. However, they also find value that when I ask them to go back and do that review, I do it as well, because I am not all-knowing. I forget where my damn glasses are when they're right on my face, right? So the reality is I give myself that opportunity as well. And when we get into that conversation, I'm excited. And I tell them, I am going to be sharing some of what I observed as your coach in terms of epiphanies, like whatever the word is, like depending on the person, and advancements that they've made. So I let them speak first and tell me, like, what do you think your top 3 really great advancements were? And what do you think your biggest challenge is right now? Give me, what is that? I don't even ask for 3. 1, what's your biggest challenge right now from this point, this leg of the journey? And then I'll go back and say, well, and I tell them in advance, I'm going to come into that session next time and I'm going to tell you what I've seen. They love that. And I'm very careful of not patting them on the back, because even that is a judgment. It's a positive, but I'm not here to validate them. Remember that. So I will be very structured about it, but they love that I see what they've done. And they'll ask me, and I'll tell them what I think right now. If objectively what I see today is the biggest challenge, and they love that, because now it's like, you see me. It just has changed the relationships I've had with people, because I'm not telling them like, you did really great. It's not for me to say if it was great. Maybe to them it was fantastic and they think great sucks. I don't want to say things that are going to set them off. So I think it's just a really good opportunity to show them a vision of what could be next.
Well, you regularly mention the analogy of being the pace car as the coach, which is good, because you're not the referee, you're not the judge, you're the pace car. So I'm not here to give you the red card or the yellow card when you're going on track. I'm not here to blow the whistle. I'm not here to hand you the cup or hold up the scorecards for you. It's here to help you pace along the journey and get where you're going, which is far more appropriate. But those conversations are important to navigate in that kind of way, where you should, and I know that in the truest form of coaching and ontological coaching, you don't really say those things to clients. I know that.
Right.
But if you have that kind of rapport and relationship with a client, you can say to them, and look, here's where I see it, and this is from my perspective. You may or may not agree with it, and I think you do have to frame it up in that sense. But, but I'm willing to give you what I see if it's of value to you. But ultimately, it is what you think that matters the most. But if it's helpful to you, here you go.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, listen, I wouldn't recommend that tactic, I think, with newer coaches until you really know how to navigate the words and the conversation and know who you're talking to, know your audience. So I don't highly recommend that to somebody who's newer yet. But getting used to having objective conversations obviously is what we do, right? And not wanting to tell somebody, even though you could see the writing on the wall right in front of them, here it is. It's not what isn't always what's best for them. And that's the bottom line. You have to know that. It is their journey. It's not your journey. So
that should always be in the coach's mind. Or what?
Sure. So I think that renewals are, I think a little bit, I make the joke to the coaches that I train, like, oh, by the way, if you don't want to have a coaching renewal, send them my way and I'll give you a referral. Like, get used to having the conversation. Don't give away the opportunity that you've created to somebody else. Don't do that.
Yeah.
Make the best of it. And even come up with some kind of a framework if you want. Like John and I have been talking about how we do things, right? How we're having these conversations. He's setting up an auto renewal, but there's a conversation around that, some best practices. And I feel the same, that you remember that they are a warm lead. Even though they're the client, their next round of coaching, this is a lead for the next spot on your calendar to fill it.
Yeah.
Why would we squander that? It doesn't make any sense. So having something in place, I think is very important. Sorry, I just choked on myself as I'm drinking my coffee.
Stay with us. Stay with us,
I'm
Angie.
trying.
Give yourself a pat on the back. Yeah, the renewal stuff is really important. Have this in mind, because unless you have a kind of program or process that's really only going to last 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, whatever, and that's kind of the end of it, there's no real need for renewal, then okay, fine. This isn't something you need to worry about so much. And you perhaps want to be thinking about referrals rather than renewals to make sure that you're getting that additional value. Refer to our episode about referrals as well.
Yep.
But other than that, you do want to think about what's the potential lifetime value of a client if you do have a kind of coaching process that could go on and on for them, and make that as smooth and frictionless for you and them as you possibly can. It's going to enhance your coaching relationship. So always look for the ways of how can you make this as easy and smooth for them, and even beneficial. I think those reviews of the journey are really beneficial for them and for you as well, because as coaches, we can often find ourselves feeling a little bit unappreciated in a good kind of way. It sounds so weird, I know, but part of our goal is to help people achieve their outcomes, and we want them to feel that they did it. But we also do want them really to recognize that we helped, that we were there on the journey with them and that was beneficial to them. So sometimes that can be forgotten unless you help them to see that journey that you've taken together. And that's where you come in. So, whilst you might think, oh, well, that's kind of ego, stuff like that, you don't want them to forget that you are the person who helped them on that journey as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I can understand why it might be perceived a little bit as ego, but I would say for most of the clients that and I don't know why or how this happened, have coached with other coaches before. And I always ask that in my discovery call, have you ever coached before? Was it within your organization, career coach? What did you do? Who'd you do it with? And I always ask, what did you love about that? What did you really get out of that? Anything? And now I'm thinking to myself too, well, they're not with that person anymore. What happened? But I don't want to be like, so what didn't work? But I want to know. So if you let them talk long enough about what they loved and liked, or what they value from it, whatever word you use, they'll tell you. But they'll go, oh, John was great, or Angie was great, and this is what I did. And that's where you need to focus, right? When they say but, because inevitably it's going to come up, it's going to tell you why they did not renew with that last person, if that was their experience, that they did have some coaching before.
You want to be like Sir Mix-a-Lot and like big butts. I like big butts.
Oh, geez. I know the song. I'm trying to see the freaking connection, but butts. We like big butts. Yes, I caught on. I'm a little slow.
We got there.
Okay, it's 5:57 a.m. for me. Give my old brain a minute to just wake up and catch up. Because what time is it for you? Like 1 o'clock?
It's coming up to 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
3 o'clock in the afternoon.
That's our time to. But I am obviously much more awake than Angie is. So how about you? As you're listening to this and all the stuff we talked about, what questions do you have about renewals? What stuff is going on for you? Do you do things in a different way? Or have you got some ideas from some of the stuff that we've talked about, how you can make your renewal process a bit better, or maybe even to implement a renewal process if you haven't had that before? We'd like to hear from you, or as your thoughts and your actions regarding what we talked about today. So you can leave us a voicemail, go to speakpipe.com The Coaching Clinic podcast. We would love to hear your voicemails. And you can leave that for free. It's all online, it's all free. And we look forward to hearing from you. But in the meantime, we'll be back very soon, at the same time next week, with another awesome episode. So we'll look forward to seeing you then.
Bye for now.